Did you know Pearl Harbor was a copy? Not an original idea, but a direct, almost carbon copy replication of a secret British attack that happened 1 year earlier. This is the story they do unteach you in school, because it shatters the myth that Pearl Harbor was a surprise out of nowhere. It wasn't. The blueprint was laid bare for the whole world to see. The date, November 11th, 1940. The place, the heavily fortified Italian naval base at Taranto. The Italian Navy, the Regia Marina, felt untouchable. Their massive battleships were nestled safely inside the harbor, protected by anti-torpedo nets, anti-aircraft guns, and barrage balloons. The water was shallow, believed to be too shallow for an aerial torpedo attack. Conventional wisdom said they were safe. Conventional wisdom was about to be proven fatally wrong. And to the British Royal Navy, and their secret weapon, a handful of obsolete biplanes. Yes, biplanes. The ferry Swordfish, affectionately nicknamed the string bag by its pilots. These were fabric-covered open cockpit planes that looked like relics from World War I. Their top speed was a sluggish 139 miles per hour while carrying a torpedo. A modern sports car could outrun them. Yet, these flimsy-looking planes were about to change naval warfare forever. The plan, codenamed Operation Judgement, was audacious, bordering on suicidal. The British carrier, HMS Illustrious, would sail deep into the Mediterranean, a sea heavily patrolled by the Italian fleet and air force. From a launch point, 170 miles from Taranto, she would send 2 waves of Swordfish to attack the Italian fleet at night. Planners predicted a 50% loss rate. Half the pilots were not expected to return. Think about that commitment. They knew the risks and went anyway. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. The British had been refining this plan for years. The key problem was the shallow harbor at Taranto. A standard aerial torpedo, when dropped, would dive deep into the water before leveling out and running towards its target. In Taranto's shallow waters, it would simply hit the seabed and get stuck in the mud. The Italians knew this, which is why they felt so secure. So, the British got creative. They invented a solution. First, they modified their torpedoes. They fitted them with something called a Duplex pistol, a magnetic and contact exploder that was highly advanced for its time. More importantly, they figured out how to solve the shallow water problem. One method involved running a wire from the torpedo's nose to its tail, which created drag and caused it to drop nose up. Another simpler method was to attach wooden fins to the torpedoes. These fins would break off on impact with the water, but they provided just enough aerodynamic stability to prevent the torpedo from diving too deep. This simple, brilliant hack made the impossible attack possible. As night fell on November 11th, the first wave of 12 Swordfish took off from the deck of the Illustrious. The night was clear, with a bright moon perfect for the attackers. The lead planes weren't carrying torpedoes. They were carrying flares. As they approached Taranto, they flew over the harbor and dropped their flares on parachutes, illuminating the entire scene below like a giant, ghastly chandelier. The Italian battleships, anchored in neat rows, were suddenly silhouetted against the water, perfect targets. Then, the torpedo bombers went in, skimming just feet above the water to avoid anti-aircraft fire. The Swordfish pilots flew directly into a storm of tracer fire and exploding shells. It was pure chaos. One pilot described flying through a solid wall of fire, but they pressed on. They lined up their targets, dropped their modified torpedoes, and watched as devastating explosions tore through the pride of the Italian fleet. The first wave crippled 2 battleships. An hour later, the second wave of 9 Swordfish arrived to finish the job. They faced an even more intense barrage, as the defenders were now fully alert. But they too succeeded, landing another torpedo hit on a battleship and inflicting further damage on the port. The result, in about 90 minutes, 21 old biplanes had achieved what the entire British Mediterranean fleet had been unable to do for months. They had crippled half of Italy's battleship fleet for the cost of just 2 aircraft. 3 battleships were sunk or heavily damaged, putting them out of action for many months. The balance of naval power in the Mediterranean had shifted dramatically overnight. The Royal Navy now had undisputed control. The world took notice. Naval attaches in London and Rome sent frantic reports back to their home countries. But one nation was paying closer attention than any other: Japan. The Japanese naval attaché in Rome, an officer named Mitsuo Fuchida, visited Taranto immediately after the attack. He walked the docks, surveyed the damage, and spoke to Italian officers. His detailed reports were sent directly to the High Command of the Imperial Japanese Navy, and specifically to one man, Admiral Yamamoto. Yamamoto was obsessed with the Taranto raid. He and his staff studied every detail: the night attack, the use of flares, the coordination of the waves, and most importantly, the successful use of aerial torpedoes in a shallow harbor. Pearl Harbor's Ford Island anchorage was also shallow, around 45 feet deep, very similar to Taranto. The American Navy, like the Italians, believed this made their fleet safe from a torpedo attack from the air. Yamamoto ordered the Japanese Navy to develop their own shallow water torpedo techniques, copying the British methods and even improving upon them by adding wooden fins to their own Type 91 aerial torpedoes. They simulated the attack over and over again in the shallow waters of Kagoshima Bay, which bore a striking resemblance to Pearl Harbor. 1 year and 1 month after Taranto, on December 7, 1941, the world saw the devastating result. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was Operation Judgement on a grander scale. A surprise attack at dawn, multiple waves of carrier-based aircraft, and critically, the use of specially modified aerial torpedoes in a shallow harbor to sink battleships believed to be safe. Even the commander who led the first wave at Pearl Harbor was Mitsuo Fuchida, the very same officer who had reported on Taranto. It's not a coincidence. It's a direct lineage of tactical genius. So why is this not common knowledge? Because the story of Taranto complicates the simple narrative of Pearl Harbor as an unprovoked and dastardly attack that came out of a clear blue sky. It shows that the tactic had been proven, that the vulnerability of battleships in port was a known fact, and that the warning signs were there for anyone willing to see them. The British proved the concept. The Japanese perfected it and scaled it up. The legacy of Taranto is immense. It was the first time in history that a fleet was destroyed by aircraft alone, without ships ever seeing each other. It marked the end of the battleship's reign as the queen of the seas, and heralded the rise of the aircraft carrier as the new arbiter of naval power. Pearl Harbor confirmed this, but Taranto was the opening chapter. This single night of incredible bravery and innovation by a handful of British pilots in obsolete planes did just change the course of the war in the Mediterranean. It provided the exact blueprint for one of the most infamous events in military history, secretly connecting a forgotten night in Italy to a day that will live in infamy. The attack on Taranto wasn't just a battle. It was a prophecy. If learning this has rewired how you see military history, show some support by hitting that like button. It tells the algorithm that this kind of deep dive history matters. And comment Taranto equals Pearl Harbor below to show you part of the inner circle that gets it. For more history that challenges the official narrative, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. Now, a word for those of you who don't just want to watch history, but want to make it. Knowledge is one thing, but applied power is what builds empires and changes your life. Watching from the sidelines is easy. Being in the arena is where true growth happens. If you tired of being a spectator and you ready to join a tribe of high performers who push each other to dominate, then I have an invitation for you. We are the Johanna tribe. We're a closed, private family of ambitious individuals. We're not looking for everyone. We're looking for the hungry and the committed. Every member pledges a small portion of their earnings back into the tribe. In return, you get access to protected opportunities, insider strategies, and a level of loyalty and support that money can't buy. We rise together, and we protect our own. This isn't for the timid. It's for those who are ready to conquer. If that's you, send your CV to the email on your screen right now. Spots are extremely limited because we value quality over quantity. Email your CV, and let's see if you have what it takes. Welcome to the tribe.